Hey everyone, it's Emily Fox. Today we'll be reviewing all of the books that I finished during the month of May, which was an interesting month because I didn't choose most of the books that I've read. I was doing a 1 week, 1 shelf challenge. I explained it in my TBR if you haven't seen it. I reorganized all my shelf and then put at the top a specific bookcase that would contain books that I either don't really want on my shelf anymore, but I want to give them a shot before getting rid of them, or books that I've been looking forward to reading for a while, and then I was picking from a jar the shelf I was reading every week. I ended up doing only 3 weeks because I stretched some of them. It just gave me a little bit more time. But yeah, it makes for the most hectic, weird mismatch wrap-ups because I didn't choose most of these. But I did get 2 books that had been on my shelf for way too long. So we're going to go through them. I'm going to start with this one because it's quite popular and I lied to someone and I wanted to apologize. I thought I read this last month. I swear the whole month was really long. So I was like, oh yeah, I reviewed it in my last wrap-up. I didn't. It's in the month of May. I'm sorry. So I'm doing this right now at The Housemaid. Super popular. You've probably seen it on so many lists of like must-read mystery thrillers. It won, I think, the Goodreads Choice Award, which at this point I've accepted that, especially that category the recommendations don't work for me. But I was still excited. I had heard that this was very much like a popcorn kind of thriller, and I wanted to see what the hype was about. And I saw, and I wish I couldn't see. Okay, it sounds a little dramatic, but the positive is that it's very readable. So I do understand wanting to just read a book that is a little crazy and just enjoying it for the ride. I get that. My main issue is that this was so badly written that for half the book, I was convinced that the main character was Delulu. She was just thinking that these things were happening in her head, that like people were talking to her that way. It's not a spoiler. I'm very much trying to keep all my reviews spoiler free. If you want spoilers, you can always ask me in the comment section and either I will answer or someone else. But yeah, I'm careful with spoilers, but this was just awful. The story following this woman, you know that she went through something, that she's currently homeless, she went to prison. You don't really know the details in the beginning, and then she's desperate to find a job and manages to be hired by this family to be like a housemaid slash nanny, live-in nanny, and she lives in the attic. Like things are weird, like the woman, the wife that hired her is weird, and she doesn't understand why she's like that because the husband is so nice, treats her so nicely. And like, I did vlog my experience with this and a lot of these during my weekly reading vlogs, and you can see me go through the up and downs as I'm reading it. But yeah, this was really not for me. I'm giving it 2-star, and it's just because it was very much readable. I would never read anything else from the author based on this one experience, but I don't do that often, like one and done, which I should do a video on that topic because that would be fun. But yeah, I have one more book by her, Never Lie, so I'm gonna give that one a shot, and if I hate it, never again, but if I enjoy it, maybe. But yeah, I'm not continuing this series. This did not need to be a series. I feel like the ending opens the door to it. It was not needed, but you know, money. So yeah, not for me, but readable. And then we have No Exit. I have been meaning to read this for a while because first off, it happens in the winter. Read this in the winter. Your main character, she is a university student. She just got bad news. Her mom is dying. She has cancer and she wants to drive there, but there's a snowstorm. So she's stuck stopping at this rest stop, and therefore the people there. And at one point she goes outside and notices a child in a van, but it has to be one of the people there. So, you know, the story is fine. Like, I have no issue with any of the things that happened, but there was something about the writing that wasn't for me. So I really struggled to finish it. Surprisingly, I believe this was made into a movie. Yeah, no hard feelings with this one. This one very much so. I don't understand why people love it. But this one, I just, again, sometimes the writing just doesn't work for you. So that was my first week, but while that was happening, I was listening to the audiobook Just for the Summer, which is part 3 in a series. I read book 1 and then book 3. I don't think you really need to read them in orders because they're romances. I don't read a ton of them, but I did enjoy book 1 and I wanted to try more because book 1 you're following 2 very much adults that are emotionally mature, and like that's the only time that like romances are going to work. And it was also like the main male character was more likable than the female character, which like doesn't happen often enough in the ones I've tried, and I feel like they tend to work better for me. So a little similarly with this one, the premise is a little too modern. I don't know if anyone else has an issue with it, but basically these 2 main characters meet up due to Reddit, which like this guy makes a post on Reddit talking about this big billboard that he sees that is essentially, I think it's a toilet ad. it's not really about that, but like that's how it goes viral. But he's basically saying that every time he dates someone, the next one ends up finding, you know, the love of her life. And then the main female character is like, me too. So they meet up, things happen. So the premise, you know, was interesting. I appreciate that. A little like Emily Henry, that also works for me romance-wise. I appreciate that the story is not just about the romance. It tends to be about like this functional family, or like the side characters. There's just more depth in there, which I, again, appreciate. I did find that both of them should not be dating right now. They both needed like time in therapy. With that said, I do think that they look cute together and I have no hard feelings about it. Not as good as the first book, but I did enjoy it. So I'm going to round it up to a 4 for the vibes. So yeah, but read it. I will be reading book 2, which I think I'm going to enjoy more than this one, from what I've heard. Okay, so going back to the challenge, the next week I ended up picking a fantasy shelf. So I read 2 of the ones that I had been meaning to read. The first one being The Bookshop in The Barbarian. I think this was inspired by Legends and Lattes. I feel like some people said no, it wasn't, but then it's literally kind of implied that it's in the same world. So like, I feel like it is. But you follow the main character. She bought a bookshop sight unseen, and she arrives there and she realizes there are goblins, and by law she's not allowed to like kick them out. They're like a protected species or something. And she has to hire this woman, big barbarian muscular woman, to help her. It's kind of how it starts. I do like cozy fantasy. I do like bookshops. Who doesn't? It was cute for what it was. I do feel like the sense of humor eventually gets too much for me. Like, I did enjoy it. It reminds me like Princess Bride, Something Emerald Sea by Brendan Sanderson, like these kind of sense of humor, which you either love or you just feel like it's a little bit like the adult version of a children's book. That's how I always describe it. So not a bad book. I am running it down to a 3-star. I can see this becoming really popular with the right audience. I believe this was self-published, and I do think the cover is absolutely gorgeous. So if you enjoy these kind of books, I would highly recommend you pick that up because it was a good book. I just don't feel like I'm the right audience for it, or like the perfect audience, because again, I did overall enjoy it. It was a nice vibe. Another vibe that was good, but nice is probably not the right word, The Deep. I had been meaning to read this book for absolutely ever. This is the second book, I believe, that I've read by the author. In this one, you're following the descendant of women that were kidnapped from Africa, brought to become slave to America, and they were pregnant during the time they were pushed overboard, and you're following the descendant that are essentially kind of mermaid. And it's very lyrical. So if you are someone that usually enjoys literary fiction, kind of magical realism, I do think you would really enjoy this because of the writing style. Like if you're trying to get into more fantasy, I think you should pick this one up. It's not super long. As a group, they have that one person that is like an historian that remembers all the memory, and all the other ones try to avoid it because of the trauma. So you're kind of exploring that, and I do think it was beautifully written. So overall, did enjoy it. I think I'm going to round it up to a 4. Once again, not 100% my usual cup of tea, but I'm really happy I read it because it was different and in a good way. I felt like I was missing out on some audiobooks that I had attempted, but it's because I put them down. So I keep my exoskeletons to myself, and I put it down really quickly. I don't know if I should give it a second shot. This was part of the Goodreads Choice Award for like sci-fi section. It didn't win or anything, but I had picked up that recommendations from there because it sounded interesting. Basically, in that world, people that are born, they're born with like a shadow. Like when you do something bad, you have like another shadow, and it seems like it's a negative thing. Anyway, I didn't make it really far into it. I just had a reaction really strongly of like dislike right away. So I decided to try to honor those feelings more and more. It seems to be helping me, but to not get in the reading slump. But yeah, I didn't finish it. So that's why I have no other audiobooks. This month was not a good reading month for me, but in terms of like quantity, but I did enjoy the next one. I was so happy to finally get to pick my own shelf, actually. That was fun. This is military sci-fi, which I love sci-fi. Military, usually not so much, but this is The Old Man's War. And this had been the whole trilogy on my shelf for a few years. I had picked them up. I think it was at like used bookstore, and I had seen them on a few lists of like must-read sci-fi. I have read the Kaiju Preservation Society, also by the same author. And you do get the same sense of humor, like dad kind of fun jokes, which I did enjoy in this book. The main character, basically in that world, when you hit 65, you can sign up to become like a recruit in the military when he turns 75. And he decides to do that. In between that time and 75, his wife passes away. So he decides to actually do it. And on Earth, they don't really know what happens. They know, you know, space, there are other aliens. They know there are like a war and like colonies, but they don't know the details. It's all hidden from them. So he doesn't really know what's going to happen, but people just assume that you're going to get a new body because you're 75. What are you going to do in space otherwise? So that's why he decides, you know, F it, let me just go and do it, explore, learn more things. So you're following him making friends and going to war, and I'm going to keep it vague, but I did enjoy book 1 quite a bit. I think this is like a 4.25. Like, it was a fun ride, but the ending like seems to really end the book. Like, you can read this as a standalone, and I feel like I kind of wish I did that because I read book 2 right away because, again, I was excited. This is the Ghost Brigades, and in this one I didn't really care as much about the story. You're following someone else, so it was definitely like concluded, but the someone else, without spoiling anything, they do create people with some of the DNA that they get from people that are passed away to become soldier. So they're part of the Ghost Brigade, so like dead people. So you're following someone who, through some circumstances, ends up being like reborn. So you're following someone on day 1. Eventually, like, I feel like the beginning was so slow. So I just wasn't as invested in this story. The story was fine, but for some reason, I felt like the sense of humor is so similar that it feels like you're following the same character over and over again. And similarly, again, in Kaiju Preservation Society, which the sense of humor per se is fun, but like, I feel like part of the same series, it just felt a bit too much. And I wasn't going to continue book 3, but then a few of you commented that you go back to this character in book 3, so I think I will be picking it up. And turns out there are 6 books in this series, it's not a trilogy. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to give myself like a moment because clearly reading series back to back, sometimes it works. It used to work for me, but it was too much with this one. So yeah, I don't know what to give the last book. I feel like 2 stars is harsh, but it's definitely not more than a 3. So read the first one for sure. I do recommend it. It was fun, but didn't change my mind about binge reading series. The last one I wanted to mention is this one. This was our Patreon book club pick of the month, and I couldn't finish it. It doesn't happen often, although I have been struggling, I feel like, lately. This is The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is my 3rd book by her. I did enjoy The Laugh of Evan, but I didn't enjoy this other one, the fantasy, YA fantasy. I didn't care for her writing that much, but the first one I mentioned, the book is so short, it's like 100-something pages that like you're able to push through. I couldn't with this one. It's like almost 400 pages, and I was so bored, so bored. I know people were saying that like there was, you know, great messages in it, and like I googled it because I wasn't seeing anything that was, like, I'm sounding really harsh here, but you're following someone, they're from both different planets, not Earth, and one of them is like a anarchist society, and the other one is like extremely capitalist. And someone from the anarchist planet goes to the other one trying to, you know, find peace in between people. He's a very brilliant physicist and blah, blah, blah. And you can find a middle ground and like a happy place, whatever. I'm butchering the whole thing, but no, it just wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. I do have more books by the author on my shelf because I really thought she was going to be an author that I love, but I don't like her writing. Anybody else? Because I don't get the hype. Other than that, I did just start Demon Copperhead as an audiobook. So there's that. I don't know what's going to happen because I'm about to start a new Read It or Unhaul It, so I might have to pause it. I do have the physical copy, worst case scenario, but so far I'm enjoying it. It's a little bit outside my comfort zone. Is it like contemporary? Historical fiction seems like a push, but main character grew up in like kind of rough circumstances. He was born to like an alcoholic teenage mother in the Appalachia. I can't say it. The mountains. And yeah, he is obviously a redhead, and let me not explain the name actually because you have to read it, but so far I'm enjoying it. As an audiobook, the narrator does have a little bit of an accent, and because it's my second language, I was struggling a little bit at first, but we're good. Yeah, so far, I'm not far into it, but I have a good feeling. So I think this is going to be a good one, but the audiobook is like 27 hours long, I think. 21. So it's going to be a long one, but I'm excited for this one. And yeah, I'm not reading any physical right now, so I'm ready to start my other challenge. It was requested that I attempt to do another 1 week, 1 shelf challenge. So I'm going to do that probably later this year. This summer I have so many challenges to do, and you can see piles of books. I have a lot of videos, fun videos in June that are coming up, including my unhaul video, my yearly unhaul video. I just went through all my bookcases trying to get rid of more of that, and we're gonna have a good number. So I'm happy about it, and yeah, that's where we're at. May wasn't the best month, but I did read a couple that were good, and the other ones can, because it's part of fun, right? I'm trying to declutter my bookcases as much as possible, and we're getting there slowly. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thumbs up, subscribe. I'll put more of the videos that I mentioned on the screen. I recommend you check those out, and I will see you in an upcoming video very soon. Bye.